On a cold February morning in the year 2000, a truck driver traveling along North Carolina Highway 18 noticed something unusual. A small figure, walking alone. It was still dark, and heavy rain had swept across the area during the night. At first, the driver assumed it was an adult, because no one expected a child to be walking beside a rural highway before dawn. As he drove closer, he realized the person appeared to be a little girl. Concerned, he slowed his truck and turned around to check on her. But before he could reach her, she left the roadside and disappeared into the darkness near a wooded area. Another motorist would later report seeing the same child around the same stretch of highway. Neither witness knew what they had just seen. Neither knew that only hours later, police would begin searching for a missing 9-year-old girl named Asha Degree. Those sightings would become some of the most important and most puzzling pieces of evidence in one of America's most enduring missing child investigations. More than 2 decades have passed since that rainy February morning. Thousands of tips have been investigated. Federal, state, and local agencies have worked together. Searches have covered forests, fields, and miles of countryside. Evidence has been recovered. New investigative leads have emerged. Yet one question remains unanswered. What happened to Asha Degree? Unlike many missing child cases, investigators have never publicly announced that Asha was abducted by a specific individual. No one has ever been charged in connection with her disappearance. Instead, the investigation has been guided by carefully documented evidence, verified witness accounts, and years of persistent detective work. Every confirmed fact has been examined repeatedly. Every credible lead has been followed. Every new development has renewed hope that one day, someone will finally provide the missing piece. Tonight, we follow those verified facts. We return to Shelby, North Carolina. We examine the timeline investigators have spent more than 25 years reconstructing. And we explore why law enforcement continues to believe that someone, somewhere, still knows exactly what happened. Before we continue, where are you watching from today? Leave your city or country in the comments. Someone watching may live closer to this case than they realize, and keeping these stories alive helps ensure victims like Asha are never forgotten. To understand why Asha's disappearance continues to affect so many people, we first have to understand who she was before that February night. Asha Degree was born on August 5, 1990, and lived with her family in the small city of Shelby, North Carolina. She shared a close home with her parents, Harold and Aquila Degree, and her older brother, O'Brien. To those who knew her, Asha was described as a quiet and responsible child. Family members and teachers remembered her as respectful, well-mannered, and dependable. She attended Falston Elementary School, where she was an active student and participated in school activities. Like many children her age, Asha enjoyed simple routines: school during the week, church with her family, basketball games, homework, time spent with relatives and friends. Nothing about her life suggested she was planning to disappear. Those closest to her have consistently said there were no known problems at home. Investigators have never publicly identified evidence that Asha was running away because of abuse or neglect. Instead, law enforcement has repeatedly stated that her family cooperated fully with the investigation from the very beginning. That fact became one of the first mysteries detectives had to confront. If home was safe, why would a 9-year-old leave in the middle of the night? The weekend before Asha disappeared had been ordinary in many ways. On Saturday, February 12, 2000, she played in her youth basketball league. According to accounts from her family, Asha was deeply disappointed after her team lost its game. Like many young athletes, she took the loss personally, and family members later recalled that she had fouled out during the game. Investigators documented the event because they wanted to reconstruct every detail of Asha's final days. Still, nothing suggested the basketball game was connected to her disappearance. The following day, Sunday, February 13th, The Degree family spent time together at church and with relatives. Later that evening, severe weather moved across the region. Heavy rain, strong winds, power outages affecting parts of the community. Despite the weather, the family's evening followed its normal routine. Asha and O'Brien shared a bedroom. The children went to bed. Their parents remained awake for a while before turning in for the night. According to Harold Degree, he checked on the children during the early morning hours after returning from work-related activities and found them asleep. At some point after that, something changed. Investigators believe Asha left the house during the early hours of February 14, 2000. Exactly why remains unknown. One detail immediately stood out. According to investigators, Asha appeared to have taken several personal belongings with her, including a backpack. That backpack would become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire investigation. At first, however, no one knew it was missing. Inside the home, everything appeared quiet. There were no obvious signs of forced entry, no indication of a struggle, no evidence that anyone had entered the residence through violence. When Asha's family realized she was gone later that morning, they immediately began searching the house and nearby neighborhood before contacting authorities. Police responded quickly. For investigators, the situation was immediately treated with urgency. Children rarely disappear without leaving behind critical clues. Detectives began interviewing family members, neighbors, classmates, teachers, and anyone who may have seen Asha during the previous 48 hours. Search teams spread across the surrounding area. Tracking dogs attempted to follow her scent. Helicopters searched from above. Volunteers joined law enforcement in looking through nearby woods and fields. As the search expanded, investigators learned something unexpected. Multiple motorists had independently reported seeing a young girl walking south along North Carolina Highway 18 during the early morning darkness. Those reports matched the approximate time investigators believed Asha had left home. The witnesses described seeing a small child walking alone despite the heavy rain. One motorist later reported that after attempting to approach the child, she ran from the roadside into nearby woods. Those witness accounts became central to the investigation. They suggested that Asha had, at least for some period of time, been alive and traveling on foot after leaving home. But they also deepened the mystery. Why would a 9-year-old voluntarily walk alone down a rural highway before dawn? Where was she trying to go? Had she planned to meet someone? Or had something happened after she left home? Investigators have never publicly answered those questions. Instead, they have focused only on evidence they could verify. Over the following days, search teams discovered several items believed to have belonged to Asha inside a storage shed near the area where witnesses reported seeing her. Officials publicly identified items including candy wrappers, a pencil, and a marker as evidence connected to the investigation. The discoveries strengthened investigators' belief that Asha had been in that area, but they still did not explain where she went afterward. For her family, every passing hour became more difficult. The hope that she might simply return home slowly gave way to fear that something far more serious had occurred. Yet despite extensive searches, no confirmed trace of Asha herself could be found. The investigation had only just begun. Now that you've learned who Asha was before she disappeared, what stands out most to you about her story? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Remembering who Asha was, not just the mystery surrounding her disappearance, is one way her story continues to matter. The next chapter begins with the final hours investigators have spent more than 2 decades trying to understand. By sunrise on February 14, 2000, what had begun as a frantic search by Asha Degree's family had become a full-scale missing child investigation. Deputies from the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office responded quickly after Asha was reported missing. Within hours, additional agencies joined the search. Search and rescue teams combed nearby woods. Bloodhounds attempted to follow Asha's scent. Helicopters searched from above. Neighbors, church members, classmates, families, and volunteers gathered to help. Time is the most critical factor in any missing child investigation. Every hour matters. Every witness matters. Every piece of evidence matters. Investigators immediately focused on building an exact timeline. The Degree family described the previous evening in detail. They explained where everyone had been, what time they had gone to bed, who had checked on the children during the night. Detectives carefully compared every statement. Nothing immediately suggested foul play inside the home. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of violence, no indication of a struggle. That made the investigation even more unusual. If Asha had left voluntarily, where had she intended to go? Investigators have never publicly announced a definitive answer to that question. Instead, they focused on the evidence they could verify. One of the earliest breakthroughs came from motorists traveling along North Carolina Highway 18 during the early morning hours. The first witness, a truck driver, reported seeing what appeared to be a young girl walking south along the highway despite the darkness and heavy rain. At first, he believed the figure was an adult. Only after getting closer did he realize it appeared to be a child. Concerned, he continued driving before deciding to turn his vehicle around to check on her. By the time he returned, the child was no longer standing beside the road. Another driver independently reported seeing a young girl in approximately the same area around the same time. According to investigators, when that motorist attempted to approach, the girl reportedly ran from the roadside into a wooded area near the highway. The two witness accounts were especially important because they were independent of one another. Neither witness knew the other. Yet both described a child walking alone under remarkably similar circumstances. Investigators considered those sightings credible enough to become a central part of the official timeline. Search teams immediately expanded their efforts around the area where the witnesses reported seeing Asha. Dense woods, open fields, roadside ditches, creeks. Every location was searched repeatedly. Tracking dogs were brought to the scene. Investigators hoped Asha's scent might lead them toward wherever she had gone after leaving the highway. Like many missing person investigations, however, weather created significant challenges. Heavy rain during the night had affected the ground conditions. Water can weaken scent trails. Footprints disappear. Potential evidence may be damaged or washed away. Detectives later acknowledged that the weather complicated many aspects of the early search. Even so, investigators continued gathering every possible clue. Then another important discovery was made. Near the area where witnesses reported seeing Asha, searchers located a small storage shed belonging to a local property owner. Inside the shed, investigators recovered several items they believed had been used or left behind by Asha. Among the items publicly discussed over the years were candy wrappers, a pencil, and a marker. Officials believed these discoveries supported the witness reports placing Asha in that general area. The shed itself became an important location in the investigation. Why had Asha entered it? Had she sought shelter from the rain? Had she been hiding after becoming frightened by passing vehicles? Or had she met someone nearby afterward? Investigators have never publicly answered those questions. No verified evidence has established exactly what happened after Asha was believed to have been in or near the shed. That uncertainty remains one of the biggest gaps in the timeline. As news spread across North Carolina, the search intensified. Television stations interrupted regular programming. Newspapers published Asha's photograph. Radio stations broadcast missing child alerts. Community volunteers continued searching despite difficult weather conditions. Churches organized prayer gatherings. Schools discussed the disappearance. Shelby, a close-knit community, rallied around the Degree family. Days passed, then weeks. Every reported sighting received attention. Every tip was investigated. Some leads appeared promising. Others were quickly ruled out. Investigators followed each one carefully. Despite those efforts, no confirmed sighting of Asha after the Highway 18 witnesses has ever been publicly verified. For Harold and Asha Degree, every day without answers became more difficult. From the very beginning, they made public appeals asking for information. They spoke about their daughter not as a headline, but as a little girl who was loved deeply and missed every single day. Law enforcement continued emphasizing one important point. They believed someone else might know what happened. Perhaps someone had seen a vehicle stopped along the highway. Perhaps someone remembered an unusual encounter from that rainy morning. Perhaps a person had kept silent for years out of fear. Whatever the reason, investigators believed the truth still existed somewhere. It simply had not yet reached them. Years later, detectives would revisit every witness statement, every search record, every item of evidence. Because sometimes, the smallest overlooked detail becomes the one that changes everything. Investigators have spent more than 2 decades rebuilding Asha's final known movements, using only verified evidence. Based on the facts so far, what do you think was the biggest challenge they faced? The weather, the darkness, or the limited evidence available? Please keep your comments respectful and avoid speculation about individuals. In the next chapter, the investigation takes an unexpected turn after a discovery made more than a year later gives detectives their strongest physical clue yet. For more than a year after Asha Degree disappeared, investigators continued pursuing every credible lead. Searches expanded beyond Cleveland County. Tips arrived from across North Carolina and other states. Each one was documented. Each one was investigated. Most led nowhere. Still, detectives refused to close the case. They believed someone, somewhere, knew what had happened. Then, in August 2001, the investigation took an unexpected turn. A construction crew working along North Carolina Highway 18 near Morganton, roughly 26 miles north of Shelby, made a discovery that immediately caught investigators' attention. Buried inside a plastic bag was a backpack. When authorities examined it, they identified it as belonging to Asha Degree. For investigators, this was the most significant physical evidence recovered since the day she disappeared. The backpack had not simply been left beside the road. According to law enforcement, it had been wrapped in plastic bags and buried, suggesting that someone had intentionally concealed it. That detail immediately changed the direction of the investigation. Experienced detectives understood that people rarely go to such lengths accidentally. The deliberate concealment suggested human involvement after Asha disappeared. Exactly who buried the backpack and why remains unknown. Investigators carefully processed every inch of the backpack. Forensic specialists examined it using the best technology available at the time. They searched for fingerprints, biological evidence, fibers, hair, anything capable of identifying the person who had handled it. Officials have never publicly released many forensic details from that examination. Keeping evidence confidential is common practice in active investigations. Certain facts are known only to investigators. If someone later comes forward with information that matches those undisclosed details, detectives can better evaluate the credibility of that information. The backpack also contained several items. Over the years, investigators publicly identified 2 objects that drew particular attention. One was a New Kids on the Block concert t-shirt. The other was a copy of the children's book McElligot's Pool by Dr. Seuss. According to investigators, neither item was known to belong to Asha or her immediate family. Detectives believe those objects may have originated from another person connected to the case. Because of that possibility, they repeatedly asked the public whether anyone recognized either item. Years later, investigators renewed those appeals, releasing updated photographs of the shirt and the book, in hopes that someone might remember where they came from. Officials stressed that recognizing those items could help identify someone who had contact with Asha. The backpack itself raised another important question. How had it traveled more than 20 miles from where Asha was last believed to have been seen? Investigators have never publicly stated that Asha herself carried the backpack to that location. Likewise, they have not publicly identified who may have transported it. The discovery simply established one verified fact. At some point after Asha disappeared, her backpack ended up buried near Morganton. That fact became one of the strongest pieces of physical evidence in the case. As forensic science advanced throughout the following years, investigators periodically re-examined the backpack using newer laboratory techniques. Cold case investigations often benefit from scientific advances unavailable when evidence was first collected. For that reason, detectives preserved every item associated with the investigation. Nothing was discarded. Nothing was considered unimportant. Every piece of evidence represented another opportunity. The FBI also continued assisting local investigators. Together with the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they continued reviewing tips and re-interviewing witnesses whenever appropriate. As technology improved, investigators developed enhanced timelines, digital mapping tools, and new forensic methods. Yet despite years of work, the central mystery remained. Where was Asha, and who had taken her? In 2015, investigators announced another important development. They publicly released information about a green, early 1970s Ford Thunderbird, or Lincoln Mark IV, believing the vehicle may have been occupied by someone with information relevant to Asha's disappearance. Officials did not publicly identify the driver as a suspect. Instead, they asked anyone who recognized the vehicle or remembered seeing one matching that description around the time Asha disappeared to contact investigators. Law enforcement emphasized that even seemingly minor information could prove valuable. The announcement demonstrated something important. Even after 15 years, investigators were still actively pursuing new leads. The case had never been forgotten. Every anniversary brought renewed appeals. Every media interview reminded the public that Asha was still missing. Every new piece of information was evaluated carefully. For Harold and Asha Degree, hope never disappeared. Over the years, they have continued speaking publicly about their daughter. They have participated in annual walks, community events, news interviews. They have consistently thanked investigators and volunteers while encouraging anyone with information to come forward. Their message has remained remarkably consistent. Someone knows what happened. Someone has the missing piece. Someone can still help bring answers. The discovery of Asha's backpack became one of the most significant breakthroughs in the investigation. What stands out to you most? The fact that it was carefully buried, the unknown items found inside, or the investigators' decision to preserve every piece of evidence for future testing? Please keep your comments focused on the verified facts. By the time the investigation reached its 20th anniversary, Asha Degree's disappearance had become one of the most recognized missing child cases in the United States. Yet despite decades of investigative work, the case had never been classified as inactive. Every year brought new tips, new interviews, and new forensic opportunities. Detectives assigned to the case continued reviewing old evidence using modern investigative methods. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, working alongside the FBI and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, repeatedly emphasized the same message: the investigation remains active. That statement matters. It means evidence continues to be evaluated, witnesses continue to be interviewed, and new information is still capable of changing the direction of the case. Unlike many older investigations, Asha's case has benefited from significant advances in forensic science. Evidence collected in 2000 has been preserved for future testing. As laboratory techniques improve, investigators have the opportunity to re-examine evidence that may not have produced useful results years earlier. Cold case detectives often describe evidence as speaking again. What appears insignificant today may become critical tomorrow. That philosophy has helped solve numerous decades-old cases across the United States. Investigators hope the same may eventually happen for Asha. Throughout the years, law enforcement has remained careful about what information they release publicly. Some details have intentionally been withheld. That decision is not unusual. Investigators often keep certain facts confidential so they can evaluate future confessions or witness statements. If someone provides information that has never been made public, detectives can compare it with the known evidence. That protects the integrity of the investigation. Over the years, several public appeals have focused on specific pieces of evidence. The green, early 1970s Ford Thunderbird, or Lincoln Mark IV, first highlighted publicly in 2015, remains one of those appeals. Investigators have never publicly identified the vehicle's owner, nor have they publicly described the driver as a suspect. Instead, they have consistently asked anyone who recognizes the vehicle or remembers seeing one in the area around the time Asha disappeared to contact investigators. To detectives, even the smallest detail can matter. A conversation remembered decades later, a vehicle noticed only once, an unusual event that seemed unimportant at the time. Any one of those details could become the missing piece. The investigation has also received continued support from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Age-progressed images have been released over the years to show what Asha might look like if she were still alive. These images are not predictions. They are investigative tools designed to help the public recognize someone who may have changed significantly over time. Every new image carries the same hope, that someone will recognize a face and make one important phone call. For Harold and Asha Degree, the passing years have never diminished that hope. They have continued participating in community events held in Asha's honor. Each February, walks and remembrance events bring together neighbors, volunteers, law enforcement officers, and supporters. These gatherings serve two purposes. They honor Asha, and they remind the public that the investigation continues. One of the remarkable aspects of this case is the community itself. More than 25 years later, Shelby has not forgotten. People who were children when Asha disappeared are now adults. Some have children of their own, yet Asha's name remains familiar throughout the community. Teachers discuss the case. Residents remember the searches. Many still hope that one day the mystery will finally be solved. Investigators have repeatedly encouraged anyone with information, even information they believe may be insignificant, to come forward. Memories change. Relationships change. Circumstances change. Someone who remained silent years ago may be willing to speak today. Someone may now recognize a detail that meant nothing decades earlier. Cold case investigators understand this better than anyone. Many major cases have been solved because of a single new witness, or one overlooked piece of evidence, or one conversation finally shared. That is why detectives continue asking for help, not because they have given up, but because they have not. As of today, Asha Degree remains missing, and no one has been charged in connection with her disappearance. The investigation remains active, and law enforcement continues to encourage anyone with credible information to contact the appropriate authorities. That is the verified truth. Everything beyond those verified facts remains part of an ongoing investigation. More than 25 years later, investigators are still asking the public for information. Why do you think community awareness is so important in long-term missing person cases? Share your thoughts respectfully, and please avoid naming or accusing anyone without evidence. In our final chapter, we step away from the investigation and remember the little girl whose story continues to inspire hope that the truth can still be found. More than 2 decades have passed since Asha Degree disappeared. The roads have changed. New homes have been built. Children who were her classmates are now adults with families of their own. Yet one thing has never changed. Asha is still missing. Every year on February 14th, her family, investigators, and members of the Shelby community gather to remember the little girl who walked out of her home during the early morning hours of 2000 and was never seen again. For Harold and Asha Degree, time has never erased the questions. Parents often measure life by milestones, graduations, birthdays, first jobs, marriage, grandchildren. Those milestones became painful reminders of the future Asha never had the chance to experience. Instead of celebrating those moments together, her family has spent more than 25 years hoping for one thing: the truth. Despite everything they have endured, Asha's parents have continued speaking publicly with remarkable strength and dignity. Again and again, they have thanked investigators, volunteers, and the community for refusing to let Asha's story disappear from public memory. They have also continued asking the same question that investigators have asked since the first day of the search. Does someone know what happened? Law enforcement believes the answer may still be yes. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, together with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, has never closed the investigation. Officials continue reviewing evidence. They continue evaluating tips. They continue following new leads whenever credible information is received. Cold case investigators often explain that people change over time. Someone who remained silent years ago may now be willing to speak. Relationships end. Loyalties change. Fear fades. Consciences grow heavier. A conversation that once seemed unimportant may suddenly become significant. That is why detectives continue encouraging the public to come forward. Not because the investigation has stalled, but because history has shown that decades-old cases can still be solved. Across the United States, advances in forensic science have answered questions once thought impossible. DNA technology, digital forensic analysis, improved laboratory methods, carefully preserved evidence. These developments have transformed countless cold cases. While investigators have not announced such a breakthrough in Asha's disappearance, they continue preserving evidence in anticipation of future opportunities. Hope remains part of the investigation. One of the most important lessons from Asha's case is that missing person investigations are about people, not mysteries. It can be easy to become focused on timelines, evidence, and unanswered questions. But behind every document in the case file is a little girl whose family loved her deeply. Behind every search map is a community that refused to stop looking. Behind every annual remembrance is the hope that one day someone will finally provide the answer that has been missing for more than 25 years. Asha's story also reminds us of the importance of responsible true crime. Real families continue living with these cases. Speculation can cause unnecessary pain. False accusations can damage innocent lives. That is why this documentary has focused only on information confirmed by investigators and verified public records. When facts remain unknown, they should remain unknown until evidence proves otherwise. At the silence evidence, that commitment matters. Every documentary is built on verified information. Every victim is treated with dignity. Every investigation is presented with respect. Because these are not simply stories. They are real lives, real families, and real communities still searching for answers. As of today, Asha Degree remains listed as a missing child. The investigation remains active. Law enforcement continues encouraging anyone with credible information, no matter how small it may seem, to contact investigators. Sometimes the smallest detail changes everything. Sometimes one memory unlocks an entire investigation. And sometimes, one phone call brings a family closer to the truth they have waited years to hear. If you know anything about Asha Degree's disappearance, investigators ask that you contact the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office at 704-484-4822 or the FBI Charlotte Field Office at 1-800-CALL-FBI 225-5324. Even information that seems insignificant could prove valuable. Before we close, we'd like to ask one final question. If Asha's story has reminded you why these investigations matter, consider sharing this documentary. Someone who sees it may remember a detail they have never reported. Awareness has helped solve cold cases before, and it may help again. Thank you for watching The Silence Evidence. Because every missing child deserves to come home. Every family deserves answers. and every case deserves to be remembered until the truth is known. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and always follow the evidence.